Hello everyone, welcome to this 10x live stream. Right, so I'm going to give you an update on what I've been working on this last month, or 5 weeks or so I think it is now, which a lot of it's been bug fixes and optimisations, but there are a few things I'm quite excited about and want to share with you today. First of all, I'd just like to welcome all of the new subscribers that I've had over the last few weeks. I couldn't do this without the support I get from all the backers, so thank you very much for that. When you subscribe, you should get 2 emails. One is the invoice and the other is the welcome email with your registration key and the link to the Discord channel. So if you don't get that, do let me know and I'll sort that out. And also I want to say thank you for all my Discord users who have been very patient these last few weeks. We've had quite a few big bugs that have taken a while to track down, and I just want to say I really appreciate all the time you take to give me excellent bug reports and crash dumps, and also the profiling people do. I don't take it for granted, and I realise you're all busy with your own work, I'm sure, and I really appreciate it that you're taking the time to help me make 10x the best possible editor. So yeah, thanks for that. And let's get going. So the thing I've done recently, most recently actually, which I'm really excited about, is the include pass, or the additional include pass. So it's been bugging me that I can't previously, you couldn't do Goto-definition on Windows headers and Goto-definition on Windows functions and stuff, and now that should all work. So as you can see, you can do I'll just make it a bit bigger. You can do Goto-definition here, and it will take you to, the Windows header. And not only that, you can go to a Windows function and jump straight to it. Now I find this really useful because it's much quicker than looking up what the arguments are in MSDN or whatever. You can just jump straight to it and see what you need to pass in. You know, it's just one of those little things that's been really bugging me. And to get that working, I had to add additional support for additional include paths. Now, in Visual Studio, as I'm sure you know, in the settings, you've got the additional include directories here. So for this project, I've got all these paths. And previously I wasn't using those in the parser, so it wouldn't have picked those up. Now you could add them manually in 10x, but that was a bit of a pain, especially if you've got lots of paths. And now it will just pick it up automatically. But you'll notice, or you probably won't because it's a bit small, but you may be able to see that there aren't Windows headers in this list, which come under the additional include directories. And I also obtained them using MS Build. So if you do log workspace settings, you should see the additional include directories. These are the ones that I just showed you. This is coming from the project file now. And then you've got additional include directories from MS Build, which works out all of the variables, etc., and global variables. And these are the Windows paths for the Windows SDKs I've got installed. And that's what it's picking up, and that's how it's finding these functions. So that's something to check. If it's not working, check the list log workspace settings command. So the other way you can add them is through the settings in here, additional include paths. That's in the root in the solution settings, and that's global for all projects. And you can add paths there as well, and they do all the same thing. Now, the way it used to work, you can also do, I should say, you can also do this for 10x workspaces as well. It works just the same. But obviously 10x workspaces won't pick them up automatically. You'll have to add them by hand. Now, the way this used to work is it used to parse all of the files recursively in all the directories. So it would get every single file in a directory and just add it to the parse set and just parse it. And that was because previously I couldn't work out what includes were actually being included. So I just I'll just add in all directories. But when I did this originally, the problem was that it was taking far too long and far too much memory, and it was just too slow to parse all the Windows headers, for example, because there are hundreds of files, Windows headers in the directories, and usually you're not using all of them. You're only using a small subset. So I had to exclude those. But from all the recent changes to the parser that's been made, like the memory optimisations that were done a while back, and now it's got the preprocessor, so it's correctly preprocessing the Windows headers. So it's stripping out a lot of stuff which is defined out, which again cuts it down. And now I've got the preprocessor, I can work out just the set of headers that are included, and I recursively chase the includes to work out exactly the minimum set that it needs to parse. So it seems to be working pretty well. It hasn't added much to the parse time in total. I had a bit of a scare where the parse time did double when I first added it, but the other night I had a late night debugging session and I managed to find the problem, and now it's back to what it was. So I also made some other optimizations that makes it even faster now. So I think I can parse the entirety of Unreal in about just over 2 minutes, which I'm really pleased with. I'm really, really pleased with that. Because as I'm sure you know, Unreal is one of the biggest code bases out there. So, right. So that was how it used to work. That's how it works now. It just parses the files that you include. So it should just work out of the box. It should just pick up all the paths you've got set up and just find everything. So I'm really pleased with that. It's one of the things, like I said, has been bugging me. I couldn't go to definition on Windows functions. Now you can. So one of the optimizations I have made, which I may change back, is, as you probably noticed, when it parses in the third stage, it does what is called syntax highlighting parsing, which is I also call parse-defs internally. And I don't currently do that on files from additional include paths. Usually because the default regex syntax highlighter does the job pretty well, and usually you don't care about proper syntax highlighting and finding reference, because that's the other thing this parse-defs does, is it gives you all the references. So the parse-def stage goes through every single keyword and just does basically a Goto-def on it to find out what it is, and then it knows how to colour it. And the other thing that does is it finds all the references. So as it's doing that, it's getting a list of where every single function is called from and every variable is used, building up a huge database so that when you do find references on something, it instantly give you a list of every place it's used. So it doesn't do that on additional includes internally. I mean, it will do it for everything that's used, but it won't cross-reference everything internally on the additional includes. Now, I can't remember exactly how much time that saved in parsing and memory it saved. Probably not much memory actually. So I might have a look at re-enabling it. But anyway, let me know if that's an issue for you, and I can definitely look into it. But hopefully it'll be okay. I think usually it's probably not needed. So that was one of the optimizations. Another of the optimizations I did was I realized that now it was including all Windows headers. There were tens of thousands of defines, and when you do autocomplete, so it's not a good example, but for example, create process, it was going through every character you typed. It was going through tens of thousands of includes, and it was doing that single-threadedly. So I realised there was a stall of a second or two as you were typing autocomplete. As you can see now, it's almost instant, and I did that mainly by threading, going wide on the. So as I iterate through the entire list of defines and check it against the current text to see if it's a match, I I go multi-threaded now. So the other thing I did was I put in a cancel in there. So as you're typing, you know, the first character you type is going to get loads of hits, and then obviously there's going to be a delay before you type the next character. So now if you're typing fast, it'll cancel the current search it's doing through all the symbols and start the new search for the next character you've typed. So hopefully it should be much more responsive. You shouldn't see any delays. As you know, 10x is trying to be the fastest editor there is, so I can't tolerate any delays, no matter how small. So hopefully it should all be instant now. So let me know how you get on with that. So I think that's everything on include parse. Don't think there's anything I was going to say. Do ask questions as we go, as usual. If you've got any questions about any of the different things. The changelog. Yeah, I was just looking through the changelog earlier, and there are, like I said, most of it is bug fixing, and a few optimisations. I think it was the 13th where I did the last stream. But anyway, I pulled out a few of the important things I think that are worth mentioning, that people have specifically asked for. We'll go through those. One of them was multi-line macros. So say you've got now, I don't mean multi-line here, I mean multi-line when you're actually calling it. So, you know, people will often do things like that and call a macro of multiple lines. And I even had one case where the first argument was split over multiple lines as well. I had some bit of a hacky code in there to try and deal with that, because all of my parsing, and particularly the preprocessor, just works on a single line basis. So I tried to hack around it originally and got something half working, but there were cases where it just wouldn't work. And cases with recursive macros that made it really tricky. So I tried to totally rewrite that. Excuse me. And now what I do is internally, I'll change this to make it into one line internally when I'm parsing it, and then the other lines will just be blank spaces. And the reason for that is, say you had a macro that returned a class that you wanted to indirect off, like that, then you'd have an empty line and then that. So internally, this is what the parser sees. It's all in one line, and it just blanks out those lines to nothing, and then leaves that. And that's actually fine. You know, obviously you can have a blank space between there and that. The autocomplete on this will actually work properly. I haven't set up a test case here, but you get the idea. And the tricky thing with this, as I think I've talked about before with the macro parsing, probably one of the most tricky bits in the entire parser is mapping backwards and forwards between the parse line, the preprocessed line and the unpreprocessed line. So I'll call this the original line. The original line is what you see in the editor, what you're editing. So we've got these lines here. The preprocessed line will obviously be ABC. So the preprocessed line will go to 3 in this case. And this is the line that the parser actually parses. So the parser is working always on, obviously, the preprocessed lines. But you're, as a programmer, working on the original lines, the unpreprocessed lines. So whenever you do Goto-def, say I was passing in a variable here, so when I do Goto-def here on this line, I've got to know that it corresponds to this variable on this line, which is a completely different line, and a completely different place, and it will actually resolve to here. So as you can see, the resolving of mapping backwards and forwards between the pre-process and unpreprocessed line became suddenly a lot more complex, because now I've got multiple lines and they're all mapping to one line, and you've got one line remapping back to multiple lines. So that was tricky. I'm not going to take you through the code because it's horrendous, but it works, and it seems pretty robust now. And the other thing I did, which quite a few people have been asking for, is, let's start again. Say you've got macro that defines to nothing. Now, as I was saying, the preprocessed line will just look like that. It won't have anything in because it's been defined out. Say this is a log macro that's defined out in release or something. So it defines to nothing. So the parser doesn't parse anything. As far as the parser is concerned, var does not exist on this line. And that meant that Goto-def on this wouldn't work, because it would map it back to here, it would map to nothing, and then not be able to resolve it to where it is. So what I do now is, as well as doing what I told you before where I map back, if there's nothing to map back to, then I actually just do a Goto-def on that. So when I'm doing what I explained earlier about the third stage of the parse, where I call parsdefs, parsdefs on all the keywords to find out what it is. What I do is, for every line, I store the preprocessed line, which is this, and also the original line. And then I do parsdefs on every keyword in the original line. So if a keyword doesn't map to anything in a preprocessed value, I just ignore the preprocessed value, and I actually call getDefs on just var and say, what do you think var is? I mean, technically it's nothing. You know, the compiler would say, well, that doesn't exist, I can't do it. But obviously an editor parser has to try and do something. So now I treat it as though it's not a preprocessed line at all, and I just say, what is this? What's your best guess on what this is? And it finds it. So hopefully now everything in macro arguments, you should be able to do Goto-def on it, and it should just work, which is a real time saver, I found. So I'll just quickly take you through parse line. So for every line in the code, I have a parse line parser line class struct. And as I was saying, if it's a preprocessed line, I store a pointer to the preprocessed line, which stores the original line, which is this, the original line token. So I actually tokenize the original line. Even though it's not going to be used in a parser, I still tokenize it. Then when I parse the preprocessed line, if I find a var in the preprocessed line, I can map, so it's like that, I can map back to this var here. So I do Goto-def on the preprocessed line in the parser when I'm parsing, and then I map it back and I put the value into the original tokens list. So when I do Goto-def on here, if I can't get it from the parser, I look in the original line tokens, and then it should find it. And these are the substitutions where it remembers, it maps from one range in the unpreprocessed line to a range in the processed line. Anyway, this is all really, really complex, so it took a lot to get working. I'm not going to take you through the gory details, but just give you an idea of what's going on. And it's made a big difference. I've really noticed it, and it's really It's just one of those little niggles, that, like the include files, that was getting to me, and it just made it so much nicer now. So I think that's everything on macros. Goto-def and define ARGS, hoverbox. Oh yeah, so let's go. So there was an important bug for the Unreal code base. I'm not going to show you this now, but when it got defined from the precompiled header files, so there are like hard-coded files that are included before anything else in the build tool, and so for things like platform windows defines, with editor, etc. They were parsing correctly, but you couldn't see what they were, and you couldn't do Goto-def on them at all. So as you can see, if I hover over this, it's now showing preprocessed line #if1, and that's really useful if you've got a really complex preprocessor statement and you want to work out why is it true. You want to be able to hover over and see which, you know, say there are lots of different settings set here, like that. You want to be able to see which ones of these are true and which aren't. So that should work now, and that's again a big time saver for me, because it's often really hard to work out preprocessor statements. Okay. Right, good question. What is a hybrid array? I couldn't think of a better name. So a hybrid array is just a static array combined with a dynamic array. I'll quickly take a quick detour and show you. Hybrid array. So it's templated and it has a static capacity. And as you can see here, it's just got an array which will be on the stack usually, and it doesn't do a dynamic allocation. And then if it goes over that when you're adding to it, then it will allocate a dynamic array and use that instead. So if we have a look at the reserve and resize capacity. So if it's less than the static capacity, it doesn't have to do any allocations at all. If it's more, then it allocates a new array and just ignores the static array and copies it over. And the reason for that is, in the parser especially, there are lots of things which usually you only have one or two. Like a good example is templates. You only have one or two values in a template, and you don't want to be allocating every single time you add to an array, a template arg to an array, especially because the parser is incredibly multi-threaded, and any kind of allocation in the multi-threaded way, it really slows things down. So I just usually use a hybrid array, set it to like 1 or 2 static, so it hardly ever does any allocations. But then occasionally, C++ being what it is, you'll suddenly get something which requires 10 or 20 template args or something. And in that case, obviously, it's still going to work. So it just allocates an array. So that's a really big speed up. And actually, one of the optimizations I did when I was doing the include paths was I found there was a case, I can't remember what it was now, where it was doing allocations. It wasn't using a hybrid array, and it was doing allocations of 1 or 2 elements, and it was doing it over and over again, and it was crippling the parse speed. So I literally just changed it to a hybrid array, because it's interchangeable with my normal array class pretty much, and it just got rid of the problem, and it was really good. So yeah, it's a good optimization trick there. Okay, what next? Autocomplete optimizations I've talked about. var args. Now I'm sure I talked about this last time, but looking at the notes, I have actually done it since last stream. is that not, why is find not working? Weird. Anyway, I don't know when I did it, but I looked it up and it has gone in since the last one. So anyway, that works now. I won't go into it, but it was one of the big things that was missing. Var ARGS in macros. What else can I talk about? Goto-def, not resolved typedefs. Yes. Now, don't know if I can find a good example. I need a typedef. See if this works. It's not the best example. Let's find a better example. Seems I very rarely use typedefs apart from function pointers. Project ID, there's one. Again, that's not a good example. I'll write a quick example somewhere random. Yeah. Okay. So the way it used to work is if you did Goto-def and on this, it would actually resolve the typedef and go to class here. And I originally thought that was the best way, but now I don't think it is. I would prefer to see the actual typedef itself, because it's very easy. If you do Goto-def on the typedef, it will go straight to the class. So if you do want to see what the typedef resolves to, you just do Goto-def twice, or G twice. And I think that's a better option. It's very easy to get to class, but it also shows you the typedef. I think I added a setting as well, where if you prefer to resolve the typedefs and go straight through to the actual class, then you can set that to do it if you want. But anyway, that's just a minor thing, but it's these little things when you're programming, it's at speed especially, it really does help. Okay, another thing I've done, there used to be an undefined keyword color in the color settings. So if you haven't seen the color settings, if you edit color scheme, see all the color settings, name and value, etc. And there was an undefined keyword setting, so you could set undefined keywords to, I think the default was red or something, but A, red was horrible, and B, it just confused everyone with the setting name. I won't go into it now, but it just wasn't good. So what someone suggested is you just use language.text, which is already there anyway. So any language text will be this color if it's not parsed by the parser. So say I've got a value here which isn't parsed, it'll now just color it white or light grey. And there's a setting to turn that off. I can't remember what it's called now. Yes, color undefined keywords. So if you set this to true, if the keyword is undefined, as you can see, it's still colored it, and that's because of the syntax highlighter. So if you're not aware of this, there are two syntax highlighting schemes. You've got the regex syntax highlighting, which is in the syntax highlighting folder. Look at the C++ one. So this is a regex syntax highlighting, which you can set up for any language you like. And if the parser doesn't work something out, it will fall back to the regex syntax highlighting. and that's why it's coloured that as red, because it's guessing it's a class. Now, that's with the setting set to true. The default now I've changed to be false, so that if something doesn't exist, and why is that not updating? I should have updated. There we go. If something doesn't exist, it'll colour it white or whatever colour you set it. And I find that really helpful, and I think most people do now. I think it seems to be the best option, because as you're programming and you make a typo, you want to know that it's wrong straight away, and then you can set it right. So I think that's the best option. But if you prefer it to always just colour everything properly, then you can set that to true. So again, another little thing, but these are all sort of quality of life things which hopefully help and make your job easier. Lambda copy catches, I can't remember exactly how they work. I don't use lambdas myself, but I think it was something like it was some kind of smart pointer thing. Oops, what am I doing? Where you could capture and assign at the same time. You can do that. I don't know the proper name for it in C++. And obviously if these were defined, it would all work. So that will work now if you use pcopy in here. And indirect off it, you'll get all the autocomplete and everything. So that's one of the fancy new C++ features, which I don't really use, but some people do, and it's needed to be supported. So auto reloading the workspace. So this is a biggie, because as you probably know, you can't edit projects or solutions in 10x. So if you're using a Visual Studio one, you have to go back to Visual Studio and edit it here, and then save it, and then go back to 10x. And previously, you would have to close the workspace and reopen it, which is a real pain. Now, it will automatically detect that the project file has changed, reload the entire workspace in the background so you can carry on working while it does it. It's not going to stall the whole editor while it does it. And it'll then reparse anything that's needed automatically. So that should all just happen seamlessly in the background without you having to worry about it. So that was a big deal. That's a nice thing to have. Another thing with Visual Studio, debug settings are now synced. So if you're setting debug stuff in the debugging tab, command arguments or working directory, etc. If you save, now I think it's a bit weird in Visual Studio when it saves this. I think I had to actually trigger a build before this was saved. So you can't just do save all, it won't save it. You have to do a build or save a solution or something, I don't know. But anyway, to get it, but as soon as the file is saved, and this is stored in the .user file, which you can check if you want. As soon as that user file is saved, 10x will now update it, and it'll update the debug settings here. So I've added a checkbox here where you can set it to sync from projects. So that means that if you make a change in the project here, save the file, and then it'll automatically get populated here. If you don't want that, just disable it and you can type in your own and do it from 10x instead. So that should help. And word wrap tabbing. So say we've got a very long line, turn word wrap on, and now if you indent it, it word wraps to the tab indent, which is really useful for comments and stuff. I mean, I don't use word wrapping because I think it's a bit unfair on the people who don't like it. I'd rather keep my line short, but I know some code bases do have long lines and it can be useful. So the tabbing should help a lot. One of the things I haven't done yet, which I want to do, is for functions with lots of arguments, how is this going to work? Yeah, it's going to indent it to there, which is fine, but it's a bit messy. It'd be nicer if it indented it to the open bracket and put them all in line with that. So I think that's on my list somewhere. I'll get that done at some point, and it should make it a bit nicer. Something I was fixing last night, and this was actually affecting all new users of 10x, which was a bit bad. So if you downloaded 10x recently and you're getting a dialog box pop up complaining about the vsdef command not being set correctly, and it means you won't be able to build Visual Studio projects. And the reason that's happening is because I forgot to add this, or somehow it fell out of the installer. It used to be there ages ago. And what it actually used to do, I don't know why I did this, but it copied the exe from the install folder to the temp folder. And then it uses this exe to grab the environment variable so you can actually do a build. And so it runs the exe from the temp folder. So everyone that downloaded and installed 10x a long time back would already have this logenv, including me, in my temp folder, so I never noticed it wasn't there for new users. And also it was causing a problem because certain antivirus software was thinking it was a virus or a bit dodgy, because it is really a bit dodgy copying an exe to the temp folder and running it. It didn't like that, so it would delete the file or not allow you to build it. So anyway, I've done it a different way now, and I've now deleted it, and it doesn't use that. It actually uses it calls the 10x exe with a logenv arg. So there's no separate exe for the antivirus software to get upset with. So that's a good thing. I'm glad someone pointed that out to me. So hopefully new users should get a much better experience. Now, I think that was everything I was going to go over. Oops, slow down. So there's been, like I said, loads of optimisations, and I've really got to stop pulling the parser apart as well. I mean, I'm getting close to the end now. I have to be, and I really have to stop adding new big things to the parser. So I think, you know, it's the include parse thing and the macros stuff are two big things, which I'm really pleased that I've done, but I don't want to do anything more like that. It's my stress levels are getting too high. So hopefully that'll be the last big changes to the parser. Now it's just all about stability and getting all these small bug fixes done. I've made some improvements to fuzzy matching as well. So when you're fuzzy matching, if you're not aware, is the thing that like you can type partial things and it will try and find it in longer strings. I don't know if it hasn't found ptest there. Maybe it's because before. There we go. Yeah. So you can just type partial words and it will do some clever stuff and work out, you know, what it might be. So the fuzzy matching, I've made some improvements there, so it should do the thing you're expecting more often now. If it doesn't work, let me know. It's one of those things that has about 100 variables and weightings and all this and different ways of checking. So it's one of those things that I'll probably be tweaking forever, but it's pretty good now. I'm really pleased with it. A few crash fixes. As more people are using it, we're uncovering a few more crashes, but there's still more than I would like. Let's look at the telemetry. So this is usage going up again consistently, which is brilliant. Number of users is about static. So it means that people who are using it for longer periods of time, which is brilliant. Crashes are still far too high. that's what I need to focus on next. But I've done some really good fixes this last week or so I'm hoping to see a big difference this going forwards now. But yeah, I'm pretty pleased with how it's going. Yeah, I think that's everything. If you want to see what I'm currently working on, then go to the GitHub bugs, and if you have a look at the wiki page, there's a link to the current task list. So I add a current label to my current task list. This is what I'm trying to work through currently, and I'm not really thinking about any other bugs that aren't on this list at the moment. So it just makes it a bit easier for me to not be overwhelmed with 600 odd bugs. I can just pick these out and say, yeah, I'm going to work on these next. And if there's a bug that you really want fixed and isn't on this list, do let me know, and I'll see what I can do. So anyway, that's going to be me for the next few weeks, working on this list and trying not to break the parser and rewrite a load of stuff. So anyway, thanks for watching, and enjoy using 10x, and I'll see you in the next live stream. Okay, so bye for now.